Well, we saw Superman, and don't worry, this video won't include any spoilers because we know a lot of people haven't seen it yet, so you can relax. The movie's been a big hit with everyone on the internet, and no one is more glad to see it be successful than, of course, James Gunn. But his journey to this moment has gone way deeper than his work at Marvel and DC. In this video, we're gonna look at how Gunn's early work shaped his voice as a filmmaker and why Superman might be the most personal project that he's ever done. All that and more in today's video. Before we begin, I wanted to let you guys know that you can check out the live discussion that we did post seeing Superman. Don't worry, it's spoiler free. The link is in the description. You can also click the live tab on our channel to check it out there. But onto the video. It's honestly pretty surreal seeing James Gunn's name roll across the screen as the director of Superman. Not because he isn't talented, that's never really been in the question, but because if you rewind 20 years, the guy was making movies about alien slugs and vigilante weirdos beating people up with pipe wrenches. Now here he is steering the future of one of the most iconic superheroes ever created. So how exactly did we get here? To really get a sense of how Gunn went from indie gross-out flicks to directing Superman, you have to go all the way back to his early days at Troma Entertainment, the low-budget studio behind legendary schlock classics like The Toxic Avenger. Troma wasn't just Gunn's first big break, it shaped his entire approach to filmmaking. There he wrote Romeo and Juliet, an intentionally absurd, proudly offensive riff on the Shakespeare classic that you were forced to read in high school. You can already spot traces of what would become Gunn's signature style in the writing of that movie, although it's a little bit gross out, so I don't know if it's going to be for everyone. Another quick note I should slide in here, before Gunn fully moved into mainstream Hollywood, he wrote a quirky superhero comedy called The Specials back in 2000, directed by Craig Mazin. Yeah, that Craig Mazin, who'd later create Chernobyl and co-create HBO's The Last of Us. The Specials focuses on a group of second-tier heroes dealing with personal insecurities, celebrity drama, and basically all the mundane stuff that the Avengers don't have time for. It was super low budget. Even though it's pretty obscure, it's a key early example of Gunn's lifelong fascination with flawed offbeat characters, and proof that he was playing around with the idea of humanizing superheroes really long before Guardians of the Galaxy made that his personal trademark. It's also the movie that introduced him to his future co-CEO and constant collaborator, Peter Safran. A lot of people forget about him, but he's very important to the DCU as a whole right now. Gunn then steadily moved into more mainstream territory. His first major Hollywood screenplay was for Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Even though Snyder directed it, Gunn's voice still shines through in the script, and while Snyder got the directing credit, it was clear that Gunn knew how to play within a studio sandbox while keeping his own voice intact. And also for the record, Gunn and Snyder ended up being friends after this movie, despite some corners of the internet still weirdly casting them as rivals because of all the Superman stuff. Then came Slither in 2006, which marked Gunn's first big directorial effort. This film was pure, unfiltered Gunn, and a body horror comedy about alien slugs infecting a small town. The combination of gross-out humor and unexpected heart became a defining part of Gunn's work, and I think that this was the first movie that Gunn and Nathan Fillion would work on together. A few years later, in 2010, we got Super, a deeply uncomfortable yet weirdly touching indie film starring Rainn Wilson as a disturbed guy who becomes a vigilante after a breakdown. Super is probably the most James Gunn movie imaginable, for better or worse. It's brutally violent, darkly funny, and full of flawed, deeply troubled characters. Gunn never really hesitates to make the audience uncomfortable, yet somehow he still manages to create empathy for characters who are borderline unlikable. I mean, he made Kevin Bacon pretty unlikable in this movie. Now, it wasn't everyone's favorite cup of tea, but it showed that Gunn wasn't afraid to take big swings, especially on projects like this. Speaking of big swings, I have to slide in this one because it's weirdly important, but also kind of shocking if you guys have no idea of James Gunn's backstory. He also created the web series called James Gunn's PG. It's exactly what you think it is, but the series was mostly goofy shorts from the early 2010s internet era. Think X-rated Funny or Die clips that never actually go X-rated, with a lot of surprising celebrity cameos. What's really funny is that Marvel saw this series among his other work and contacted him about doing Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not kidding. He also has other projects over the span of his career, of course, but these are just a few that I thought were key highlights to understand his filmmaking career. He was also the writer of both live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Yeah, those ones. But then, Marvel happened. When Gunn was announced as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, a lot of people who were familiar with his previous work were skeptical. How could the guy behind Slither and Super helm a massive family-friendly space opera featuring a talking raccoon? Yet somehow he frickin' nailed it. Guardians didn't just succeed, it exploded. Gunn leaned into his strengths, a ragtag group of outsiders, sharp humor, emotional honesty, and now his iconic needle drops. Just understand how crazy this is. He took these obscure comic book characters and made them into a household name. Visually, his style became richer and more polished, yet still unmistakably James Gunn. But everything served the characters first, even in the giant cosmic scope of the Guardians. But then in 2018, Gunn was fired from Disney, and DC snatched him up pretty quickly because, well, their own universe wasn't doing so hot. And suddenly, Gunn was able to cut loose in a way that Marvel never really fully allowed him. With the Suicide Squad in 2021 and Peacemaker, he went all in on the violence, humor, and darker themes. The Suicide Squad felt like Gunn's earlier unfiltered work, but dialed up the blockbuster budget. Peacemaker, meanwhile, took a side character from that movie and somehow turned him into the emotional core of a heartfelt series. It was Gunn's favorite trick again, taking unlikable and weird characters and making you genuinely care about them. And now here we are at Superman. This film has a lot riding on it. It's the cornerstone of DC's new universe, and Gunn himself admitted that he was initially pretty nervous about directing Superman. He famously turned it down at first, opting instead for the Suicide Squad, but following his pre-firing from Disney, Gunn went through a deeply emotional time. In interviews, he spoke openly about how the outpouring of fan support and direct messages from people that he's worked with at his lowest point genuinely touched him. He said that it was the first time in his career that he truly felt love.
In a moment when I thought my career was over.
Yeah.
And I felt loved for the first time in my life.
That experience, in his own words, reshaped his perspective, and you can really feel that sincerity in Superman. There's still the classic James Gunn style, clever dialogue, humor, and of course, at least one perfectly placed needle drop. But now there's something deeper. Gunn didn't just want to make a good superhero movie, he wanted to make a Superman movie with real emotional honesty. And without spoilers, trust me when I say, he absolutely freaking nailed it. Gunn's evolution isn't just about bigger budgets or flashier visuals, it's about his ability to find emotional truth and real human connections, even in the strangest and most mainstream of places. You can see this in all of the characters in Superman. Lex Luthor, despite being the genius villain, who feels eerily similar to certain real-world billionaires, still has a human side that emerges during certain scenes, and he's supposed to be the pettiest, most punchable-faced dude in the movie. And he is, trust me. Ultimately, seeing James Gunn's name in the Superman credits feels surreal, precisely because of how unexpected this journey has been. From Troma to Marvel to being the co-CEO of DC Studios, Gunn's career has always stayed true to who he is as a filmmaker, even as he's grown, evolved, and changed. And while Superman might seem worlds apart from the alien slug movies and vigilante flicks of his early career, it's actually exactly where Gunn has always been heading, telling emotionally authentic stories about misfits and outsiders, just now on a bigger scale. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly dive into one of your mailbag questions. As always, if you want your question answered in a future video, make sure to leave a comment below with #mailbag. This one comes to us from Lore Cookie. Bit of a broad one, but what are some of your favorite novels? Thank you for the question, Lore Cookie. When we're not reading the comics for videos, I'm typically reading nonfiction and sci-fi books. I recently read through Project Hail Mary, which is an upcoming movie, but I read through it first before I found out the book was getting an adaptation. There's also some true crime books that are spread throughout my library, like Mindhunter and Killer Across the Table. What I also enjoy is books about chefs. Yeah, I know, a weird one, but Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential was a really cool read, even if you don't care about cooking, because he reveals stuff about 3-star Michelin star restaurants that you would have never guessed. Spoiler warning, a lot of it is about cocaine and anger in New York City high dining restaurants. Additionally, I read through Ready Player 1 and 2. I was a fan of 1 when it came out, not so much a fan of 2. It gets a little too self-indulgent with the references. And yeah, for those books I know it's the core, but I'm talking about the trial specifically. Anyways, thank you to everyone who stuck around to the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.